pursuing this agenda, and I think post-normal time. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good evening. I must commend IIIT East Asia for pursuing this agenda, and I think post-normal times, post-normal studies, to me a very critical area that we need to continue to explore and digest some of the more difficult, controversial views. And with the presence of Ziauddin Sardar and Fauzan, of course, helping to coordinate the program, and Muhammad Norman Nawawi, and of course Jordi Serra Del Pino, good to have you. It's time that you've not been back to Kuala Lumpur, and Lian Mayo. And I think a very formidable team that the participants would naturally benefit immensely from their wide breadth of knowledge and experience in the field. Now, post-normal implies that much of what we have taken thus far as normal, conventional, or orthodox just does not work anymore. Look at COVID and post-COVID, and in Malaysian context, flood and post-flood, the notions of control and certainty have now becoming increasingly obsolete. Now, in a way, post-normal is not really a new period or a phenomenon confined to our present time. It is, to my mind, more a wake-up blow that strikes us away from our slumber or complacency. For after a very long time, we have been under Cartesian illusion, believing that we have full control over the planet, and the sense of arrogance that we feel we are able to make accurate forecasts. Now, post-normal affirms that this is certainly not necessarily the case. From the Islamic classical texts of Al-Imam Abu Hanifa, the 8th century jurist of Persian origin, used to provoke his students and colleagues to think about post-normal situations by postulating various hypothetical questions centered on the question of what if. Now, this is certainly not the natural, conventional approach to contemporary Islamic education. But this happens to be a great classical text known as Al-Fiqh Al-Iftiradi, the principle or methodology of a futurist thinking, what we call predictive, that anchors on the power of reason and the capability of synthesizing the idea with the religious text in order to produce a ruling. Now, the understanding of post-normal times and how to operate within its paradigm requires the optimum comprehension of 3 C's: complexity, chaos, contradictions. I must acknowledge the profound lectures by Jordi and Zia, who have been hammering these points. Now, complexity, complex systems are open systems, and we must understand the system's complete environment before we can understand the system. And the environment is complex in itself. There's no human way of doing this. The knowledge we have of complex systems is based on the models we make of these systems, which implies that the complexity of the system has been reduced, and that some aspects of the system are always left out of consideration. The problem is further compounded by the fact that which is left out interacts with the rest of the system in a non-linear way, and we can therefore predict the effects of our reduction of the complexity, especially not as the system and its environment develops and transforms in time. If that is confusing enough, let me venture to the second point of chaos, characterized by a proportionate causality, whereby small, insignificant initial conditions can trigger major upheavals. It also implies that a breakdown anywhere has a knock-on effect, unsettling other parts of the network, even bringing down the whole or the entire network. A relatively small numbers of greedy bankers can bring down the economy of the whole world. This we have seen in the mortgage crisis, banking crisis, even in this strong, formidable institution in Wall Street, New York. Now, to argue further, we have to acknowledge and understand that even smaller bunch of 9/11 terrorists can trigger a chain reaction that led to the advent of new conservative ideology in the United States and Europe, and change the course of Iraqi, Afghani, Pakistani history simultaneously. The wealth of countries like Britain and the USA is concentrated in the hands of top 1%, then is owned by 90% of the rest of the population put together. In a world of super abundant food, around 850 million still go to bed hungry every night. So now, the third point regarding contradictions. Everything has its counter effect. Nothing works or is in isolation. For example, progress. Despite how beneficial we may think it is, it always has detrimental side effects. National car project is useful for transportation, but it adversely contributes to the global heating. The economic prosperity for the few means financial and ecological disasters of the many. We in Malaysia has been troubled, of course, by the flood and a major deforestation, logging enterprise that's caused innumerable harms, particularly to the poor. So there has been talk about the 18 billion ringgit worth of exports, but the price and the sufferings of the poor masses has to be contended with. So, of course, now there is, call. I made this call yesterday in Parliament, have a moratorium and logging now, and no more new licenses or forest deforestation and logging activities for the future, in the name of protecting nature and more so protecting the livelihood of the poor. Now, in the troubled times induced by the post-normal triads, complexity, chaos, contradictions, the only definite outcome is uncertainty. Now, uncertainty. Many novel problems have an inbuilt uncertainty that can only be resolved sometime in the future. We have experienced swine flu virus. We do not know precisely how this virus will mutate in the near future. We only know when the virus has mutated, and it can mutate in a number of ways. Post-normal times, therefore, add extra dimension to our ignorance. 3 types of ignorance. I tend to be I've emphasized quite a number of times this clash of ignorance, the pretension of knowledge, but the illusion of knowledge in the past. I will not venture to that. But the three types here, in the context of our deliberations, covers firstly the ignorance of our ignorance, no humility. Although most sages of the past, from Jalaluddin Rumi to contemporary scientists, have already talked that our knowledge is a small aspect or small quantity from the enormity of knowledge around us. But the humility to acknowledge that is mostly absent. That's why the first dimension of to our ignorance is again the ignorance of our ignorance. Number two, the inbuilt ignorance of the potential risk of recent developments. And number three, the ignorance generated from information overload. Otherwise, you will not find this extreme fascist, racist tendency or religious bigotry if not for ignorance. The normal, therefore, that we seek to return, we call it status quo ante. But from the perspective of those who are suffering from the direct impact of climate change, or migrants or refugees fleeing from oppression, or millions of those who lost their jobs due to automation and AI, or those millions who are thrown in internment camps or declared non-citizens simply because of their faith, I would add political belief, because I do experience that. The pre-COVID-19 world was rather abnormal, and this is not how things ought to be. The normal life was certainly getting more crueler and crueler. Now, the contemporary writer Pankaj Mishra suggested that even bigger systematic crisis lay ahead, and as such, return to imagine normal was not on the cards. Therefore, it could be, if we could paint the future by ourselves, we would want to anchor it on noble values and better ways of appreciating life and nature, elements lacking in the current educational system and bureaucracy. The existing values and structures of science and education and the dominant paradigms are incapable of producing a better normal. I would emphasize the word values, which is in deficit in present times. Now, the new normal, Simon May envisions 4 potential futures in shaping his post-COVID-19 world. Again, with emphasis on values and centralization. 1. State capitalism. Centralized response, prioritizing exchange value. 2. Barbarism. Decentralized response, prioritizing exchange value. 3. State socialism, centralized response, prioritizing the protection of life. And number 4, mutual aid, decentralized response, prioritizing the protection of life. Therefore, May favors state socialism. He also finds mutual aid future promising, where we adopt the protection of life as the guiding principle of our economy, and individuals and small groups begin to organize support and care within their communities. And I think this is an issue that participants should look at and give their input and their response, because these terms can be also value laden and would generate some exchanges, if not more, rancorous exchanges. Now, Max Haven, the post-COVID future will be, according to him, defined by either the desperate drive to return to normal or a great refusal of that normal. So may I thank again the speakers and the participants, and would strongly urge you to engage in this reason exchanges and debates in order to grasp the more complex issues and arguments, and be more forthcoming and determined in our understanding of what the post-COVID-19 future will be. Terima kasih. Thank you.